I call Dr. Murthy, Dr. Rao, Dr. A.C. Chakraborty to get to this place so that students can begin their
sitting with luminaries of in the domain of space, and I must say that I'm a contender. And the reason why I say that is that my core competency does not lie in space sciences. I've been a military aviation practitioner. I've been a test pilot. I've flown with the Indian Air Force. It's just that when the selection was required to be made, time was short, and since I flew with the Russians requested for selection to be made from amongst test pilots. And the reason they did that was because, really speaking, the test flying or aviation, especially fighter flying, which is faster jets, and the extension of that really is, technology-wise, is into space. So they felt that if they get test pilots, the training time would be lesser, the learning curve would not be as steep as it otherwise would have been. And that is how, and at that time when the selection was made, I was young and I was therefore fit. And since I was an experienced test pilot and having had flown fighters before that for quite a few years, I was just fortunate enough to have been selected. So, really speaking, that is my background. So I request you not to ask me very technical questions. If they are technical, I will just look at the gentleman sitting on my head, and I'm sure that they will be helping answer that question. Yes, sorry.
And when I tried to solve them, this much for Rakesh. Because we just start. Okay. But here again, we must add that Rakesh will be here tomorrow also, and for at least 1 hour, those who will be present here will get an opportunity to ask questions. So that's an additional point. Now, one question really interested me. This is a pure career-like question. Which is the best school to admit my ward? So that what is your experience when the rocket took off? How did you feel in space? All these things. And it's my present duty to name those who have sent these questions. If I go on reading this question, this will take a lot of time. But the questions have come from, I'll just read out. Shumir Mitro, S.K. Maiti, Shishendu Shingupto, Reshmi Singh, and Maharaja. No, she's from Maharaja Minister College. No Maharaja here. Mamikanshu Boshu, Puran Pal, Wabib Shaguhar bin Zakir, Rajiv Barik or Boni, Ishita Das, Rajendra Nath Rai, Shobhu Sadar. These questions are all for Rakesh. So I can hand over the questions to you. You can choose to answer as many as you like, or you can make a summary of all these things. And of course, one question is that you believe in God. These type of questions are a tag question in every such seminar.
Well, thank you. Yeah, put the volume down. Whether or not, what was I inspired by to choose this line? I hope I'm not disappointing the audience. I did not choose this line. I only wanted to fly fighter airplanes when I was a very young child, and I was very fortunate that my parents allowed me to go into this because they felt it's a dangerous profession. And but thankfully they did not stand in my way. So that's message number one. If your children want to do something, please let them do it. And that's message number one for the parents. And two, I don't want to say my parents were heroes. They were very, very nervous that I was joining this line. And in fact, they were horrified when I tried to specialize in test flying, which is supposed to be a degree a lot more, shall we say, dangerous than normal flying, fighter flying. But then again, they couldn't also. They couldn't tell me to interrupt my career. But the point is that they just carried on with the support. And it so happened that, like I had just explained, was it here or just that the Russians wanted test pilots, and I happened to be a test pilot, and I was there at the right time, at the right place, and I was young and I was fit, and there I was. So, message number two: if any opportunity comes your way, even if you're not expecting it, please don't kick it off, because it could well change the trajectory of your life. And I was very, very fortunate to have not shunned it, though it did look out of the world at that time. So, but then, I knew that it would be a kind of an interruption in my career. But what was on offer was something which any Indian or any person would have loved to get a shot at. So it was too good to miss. So the message is, whatever does come your way, please grab that opportunity and let's see where it takes you. It took me into space. So, and those are the two bits which I've answered. I think the third question was, what did you feel when you were there in the launcher, waiting to be launched? I think the connotation is, were you nervous because you were about to start a journey you had never experienced before? That means, did you have a fear of the unknown? Well, I'll answer that in a different way. That I was an experienced test pilot by that time, and moving into the unknown, testing aeroplanes which I've never flown before. So one was already accustomed to doing that. And so you devise a complex kind of a process, how to approach something which is in the domain of the unknown. You tend to try to attempt to de-risk as much as you can with past data which you had the good sense to study before you step into that arena. And therefore, there was no nervousness. That was one reason. The other reason was, that's a very individual reason, and that was that since my destiny at that point in time was not in my hands, in the sense that the launcher was controlled by computers, it would have been silly for me to, get so nervous that it starts affecting my functionality in that particular craft.
So, sir, if we can chip in with a counterpoint, like the first Apollo vehicle that was designed to be sent to space actually got burned up. All the 3 astronauts were burned up. So you had that in mind also, you had studied. So that would have been a...
No, I didn't have that in mind, because that happened because at that time, that spark ignited a 100% oxygen environment. And during the training, that was one of the first questions I asked the instructor, but the questions I learned from that, and it was a mixture of yes.
So you were in safer hands.
I wasn't.
But confident.
That was that aspect. So here, just as an aside, John Young was an American astronaut, and he was known to be a very reticent, very underpaid kind of a person, never ever got excited. But when he flew the first space shuttle and landed, he was seen to go around the shuttle after landing, and he was pumping his fists like this. And the media which was gathered there asked him that, this is so out of character. Why were you doing this? He says, you know, when I was walking around, I just realized that there are some 120,000 components in the space shuttle, and each has been bought from the lowest bidder. Because it was a government contract. And it all worked. So the point is that if it has to work, it will work. It's not that if you're worried, it will work.
Russian satellites are supposed to be less reliable than the others.
No, I would put it the other way.
They don't even tell how many of them things are done.
And I disagree, sir. And not because I flew with the Russians. Why I'm disagreeing is that the launcher which has been taking the rest of the astronauts into the International Space Station today, till yesterday, was essentially the same design which Yuri Gagarin used. So the Russian philosophy is to keep improving incrementally so that all the safety data which you have collected remains relevant. Yeah, so by that token I can remind you about two space shuttle disasters. So
completely different reason.
Different reason maybe. Yeah.
Also,
See, the American system is to, if you want anything path breaking done, go with the Americans. If you want reliability, then go with the Russians.
India is
Well, so that's my question.
If our statistics was correct, you were in space for 7 days, 21 hours, 40 minutes.
20 hours. It looked more like half a day.
So after that, when you came down, you had to go through a process of rehabilitation, right? Because there's a gravity over there. How did that happen? Because this question has been asked by Shulokna, Unkita, and Sheta, I believe all of them are students at the college of Victoria Institution.
Yeah, so that is a physiological shortcoming that when you're in space, because of the absence of gravity, physiological changes happen within the body, and the heart rate slows down because otherwise too much of blood is going to the head. So naturally when you come back, nobody's told the body that you're back home and there's gravity here. So the blood is not enough. Enough blood is not reaching the head. So you don't feel very comfortable for a period of readaptation, which is about 48 hours. So this happens to everybody, and we were prepared for that. Therefore, it wasn't much of an issue.
Did you used to take a bath in the space?
The point is, if you take a bath in space, you might drown while taking a bath because the water is all around you and it's floating, you know. So you use medicated towels and give yourself a scrub, and that's how it's done.
You might be reminded of Captain Haddock traveling with Tintin, and who used to drink regularly. And once when Johnson and Watson had put the handle down and the artificial gravity went away, it was floating in space. So the whole of the liquid form was bubble.
Sir, tell us about the Myanmar fire story. In one of your interviews, you said about this.
Sorry?
Sir, in one of your interviews, you said about the Myanmar fire story. I mean, in the spacecraft, you saw that a smoke is going up. So please tell us.
That happened during my flight because when you are in near Earth orbit, it gives you an excellent platform to observe the Earth and what is going through. So I just happened to, when we were flying over India, I just happened to look right and I saw a very thick plume of smoke rising from Myanmar jungles, and the upper air movement took the smoke away, and it was going across into the neighboring country. So I just reported it as an observation, and I don't know whether that was an intentional fire, as it has been happening in Africa also, burning down trees, creating areas so that so-called development could take place at the cost of the environment. That's what I think.
Okay, there are questions addressed to other panelists as well. We will come back to Rakesh, of course.
ISRO has already demonstrated a scaled-down model on the lines of the space shuttle. It has got airborne, it has gone into space, and it has been recovered autonomously without any human being in it. So these are the initial tests, and ultimately I am sure that if you push this to its logical conclusion, once you have the Indian laboratory up in orbit, then this could become the transporter to ferry our crews and as well as materials and scientific instrumentation for work in near Earth orbit. So ISRO is, I think, on various fronts is definitely progressing forward.
Yeah, they have done that test, but that is actually I think that capsule which has to come back in time. So that has to pass through the atmosphere, the heat of the atmosphere friction. So that has to be recovered. That is in addition to that, the rocket parts also is clearly recovered.
How it changed your perspective towards life, your attitude towards life?
Well, I think there are two ways to answer this question. One is at a personal level, how the life has changed. Well, I think one loses one's privacy totally. But that is because nothing has happened in this domain for 40 years, and therefore I have remained the one and only person. But fortunately, now that 4 other guys are in the training, I'm hoping that from next year or from 2085 onwards, I will not be so much in demand. So my life will probably come somewhere back to normal. But from a psychological standpoint, and this has happened, there is no astronaut who comes back with a different worldview of what is on. Yeah, you touched upon it, that is where you get to see the big picture, and that is which is what Zadeep was referring to. And I would, if you haven't seen this Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot, please take the trouble of seeing it. It gives a very good snapshot with the kind of feeling almost every space traveler comes back with. It is what they come and realize while in space is the fragility of our planet Earth. They also know, yes, and looking at whether you're using the Hubble telescope or the latest James Webb telescope, you can see that there is no other habitable place as far as these telescopes tell us. So instead of ruining heaven, which is what we have, I don't, much endorse the rush to build up a far-off hell somewhere else before we learn sustainable development. And that's I think is an extremely important lesson which we've come to realize. Unfortunately, there are not enough people talking about it, even those who return from space, because everybody who comes back, at least in the Western world, has been absorbed by the private sector. And when you're in the private sector, you're obviously wanting to increase business for the company you're working in. And that increase in business is going to increase space debris. and stuff. So really speaking, if you do not, so if you do not change our economic model also of quarter-on-quarter growth, I don't think there is any hope, because ultimately what is happening, our planet has got limited resources, but our expenditure of those resources is just not compatible. So therefore, we will be running out of our resources, and we will be ruining the only place which can sustain life till as far as the telescope scale. So it doesn't make sense. Go ahead with colonizing the moon, we will need a whole lot of disciplines of setting up a colony on the moon, and that includes architects, that includes engineers, and people with plumbing capabilities. Who goes out, first thing he wants to look out for is his country. And that's
still there. You go back. Can you go back now?
Rakesh ji, can someone not having a technical background?
An analogy, and that will be from my own profession and background, and that is that when you are trying to push the boundary and get into a new domain, a new realm, which you don't know what it entails, then it's a highly professional pursuit. So you will require only professionals who are adept in that narrow vertical to be able to prove the system and to demonstrate that it can survive, the life can still function over there. But that is not all.
A captive audience listening intently to every word spoken by the panelists. One can only aspire for such a session. We would be clapping for the audience. Let's all clap for ourselves. And with that, with thanks to Rakesh ji, Anuj ji, Professor Rao, Professor Chakraborty, we conclude this session and hand over the mic to Professor Chakraborty for the final answer.
No, to thank him. So, I requested him, and he immediately did. He is always with us. He is from All India Radio. I have given many interviews in his. He is very good in astrophysics. So I thought that who could be the best conductor of this project. So I hope that you also enjoy.
Okay, come. Not many cups of tea. Yeah. Wow, thank you. Please come. Okay.